Hello, Maverick traders. Welcome out to your currency recap, October 16th. Corey here with you. So we always start with meaningful news, and right now all eyes and ears are on the war that has broken out in Gaza. Of course, any new happenings, any other countries getting involved, this will be big news and have ramifications for currencies around the world. We'll look at the markets from a top-down approach. Equities have been rising, a little short-term risk on, but can that continue? And then we'll talk about best setups, where we're going to be looking to put on the next good trade. All right, so where is that next trade? Well, I can tell you there's a lot of things just stuck in neutral. We've got the British pound, the euro, the US dollar, the Japanese yen, Bitcoin Cash. Some of these were just a little bit more on the zero line. Now, I continue to highlight on the more bearish side Litecoin and Ethereum, the underperformers, and I have a little bit different take. We've seen crypto bounce pretty sharply, but I think it's an exhaustion high. I think we're about to see a reversal, so we'll see if that makes sense as we go through. But most things are just sort of more in the neutral camp. So let's make sense of this together. Well, let's start with the news. Gaza evacuation order was initiated. The U.S. is sending troops towards that area. Markets are in a bearish correction, which means we've been rallying. And I highlighted this a couple of weeks ago when the markets turned positive after a gap down a couple of Mondays ago, even with the war having broken out over the weekend. That was a market tell, and that told us to just expect more upside, expect more of a risk-on scenario for a while. Well, that's now played out, and we've had this upside correction. So is it done? I think so. I think we're going to move back towards a little bit more risk-off environment very soon, very shortly. The laggards today could very well become the outperformers. Japanese yen, US dollar, and Swiss franc are risk-off currencies. They're more defensive, and it's actually where I would expect a little bit more upside. Crypto had a huge upside day, but I think it's in exhaustion phase. So what happens when something has so much emotion around it? A lot of times there will be long declines and big spikes up, and long declines and big spikes up, and long declines. So crypto's in that space. It's spending a lot of time going down, and then it'll have these enormous bounces. And that happens when something is heavily shorted, heavily bet against. It happens in GameStop stock. It happens in AMC stock. These are meme type stocks where the Reddit crowd is pumping them up, but they spend most of their time declining because fundamentally they can't support those prices. And crypto's in that phase where it has these short-lived, enormous rallies, and then it fades off for an extended period. And I think crypto is in that space. So as we look at crypto, huge day today, but is it a good signal? I think it's not, and I'll try to make sense of that as we look at a few of the charts. So as we look at the broader markets, a little bit more of a choppy dynamic. We've been rallying for a couple of weeks since the war broke out, but that really only brings us up underneath the 50-period moving average back to this gap zone. It's not out of the woods yet. So if I look at this market, we had the triangle that we had highlighted for some time. That broke on the downside. Now we've had a corrective phase. That's likely to roll over. Does it happen immediately? Actually, I think there's probably a little bit more, maybe a couple more days of a short-term, little bit more upside. I could see that, but there's not much. I don't think there's much left in this. So it's very small upside potential, but a big downside move I anticipate will be coming in the not too distant future. That's my analysis. That's what the charts and things look like to me. We've got CPI coming out of Canada tomorrow morning. We've got retail sales here in the US. We've got industrial production on Tuesday night in China. We've got CPI coming out on Wednesday for the UK zone. We've got employment in Australia on Wednesday night. We've got Fed Chair Powell speaking on Thursday morning, and some retail sales again that could move the British pound sterling on Friday. But ultimately, if I were going to highlight, I would say Fed Chair Powell speaking and CPI data. Canada CPI, the British pound, watch it on its CPI because inflation is a big factor. So, where do I think there's possibilities? My thesis is that this is one of those phases where, again, Bitcoin spends a lot of time down and then a big burst up and then a lot of time down. And that's where I think we're at. And you'll notice, look at this big bursting day or, candlestick, this daily chart with huge volume. And lo and behold, it was the top. And over here, this is the closest thing similar. Big, huge bullish candle with volume similar. And it was or is expected to be a top. So just as this faded off thereafter, I think we're going to fade off from here. That would be my estimation. And the candlestick really tells that story to a certain extent with the long upper shadow. A failure on the part of buyers to really hold it up there. Long upper shadows tend to be markings of tops. And then you get a decline thereafter. And this one today was enormous. It could not hold those levels, and it gave back almost 1,500 on Bitcoin. It came all the way back down from almost 30,000 back into the 28.5 range. So it was a big reversal off of the highs. The bullish day looks fantastic. It looks like, hey, Bitcoin was up a lot today. It finished up 4.5. Well, it was up 8 or whatever at one point and gave back half of it. So I think that's where we're at. It back and feels, and we'll spend the coming weeks going lower. And if you wanted to bet against something in the crypto space, I think it's even better to bet against one of the weaklings like Litecoin. Okay, similar to here, and we fade off. I think that's the similarity. Look at the long upper shadow. And the reason I like Litecoin better, it's still below the moving averages, still in a bearish trend, still has a lot more selling pressure than buying pressure. So today's exhaustion high I don't think is really as bullish as it looks, being that we were up on the day. It's actually gave back a good portion of those gains across the board. So continue to look for those opportunities. As always, the market's going to grade our work, so I'll be doing the currency recap next Monday. We'll come back. We'll evaluate crypto. We'll see if it took off to the upside or if I was right, and this was a bit of an exhaustion high. Have a great rest of your week, a great week ahead, and we will see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.